Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And in this episode, I'm going to give you some simple sugar-free recipes. And when I say sugar-free, I also mean flour-free. And that includes all types of flours. Why? Because grinding up grains or nuts into powder means that the starch in the original grains or nuts is metabolized much faster by the body, creating a faster blood glucose spike and, as a result, the production of insulin. And as you may already know, insulin is the fat-storing hormone. So it's not so much the number of calories in a food that may lead you to put on weight, but rather the source of those calories. And if the food that you eat stimulates your insulin, then there's a far higher chance that you'll put on weight compared to foods that don't stimulate your insulin. Oh, and by the way, even more importantly, is that the recipes that I'm going to give you are delicious. We'll get to my simple recipes in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. Come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at @mylifeaftersugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. Okay, so let's have a look at a few general guidelines that I like to follow to avoid added sugars. So, first of all, avoid obvious added sugars like in candies and baked goods and even so-called healthy foods like muffins and energy bars that are still highly processed and probably contain either natural sweeteners or industrially produced sweeteners. And don't be fooled by the use of the word natural, because the vast majority of processed food products, including sweeteners, are anything but natural. But it's a good marketing ploy to use that word. Another thing to try to avoid is liquid sugars like in sweet-tasting drinks and even pure fruit juice, which is basically a sugar bomb with all the sugar of the fruit and very little, if no, fiber. Same thing for smoothies. Yes, the fruit was whole before it got put in the blender, but now that the fruit and maybe vegetables are blended, the body metabolizes them much faster because they're no longer in their whole form, and this can lead to a higher and faster blood glucose spike, and as a result, an insulin spike. So if you're trying to reduce sugar for weight loss or for any other reason, then a blood glucose spike and an insulin spike is what you're trying to avoid. Another thing to try to avoid is refined starches in processed products. So check the ingredients list on packaging to find words like flour and modified cornstarch, for example. and see if you can reduce or replace common starches such as bread, bagels, tortillas, pasta, white rice, and even potatoes. Maybe not completely replace them, maybe not forever, but just as a little experiment to see how you feel and what you can replace them with. Why? Because starches, especially refined starches, like in many highly processed food products, for a lot of people, can also produce a faster blood glucose spike and therefore an insulin spike. Basically, stick to whole foods. So for some people, for example, potatoes are fine. But potato chips or fries, well, if I take myself as an example, it's easy for me to overeat them. So it's not just about the insulin spike, it's also about my behavior. I'm better off just keeping away from them. So here are a few meal ideas for breakfast, in other words, for your first meal of the day, whatever time of day it happens to be. And when I say recipes, I use the term loosely because basically these simple ideas just require some ingredient assembly more than an actual recipe. So if you're used to having breakfast with either industrial boxed cereal or instant oatmeal, you can replace that with overnight oats, also called steel-cut oats. And keep away from the instant steel-cut oats, like the 3-minute ones. We're looking for the ones that take at least 10 to 20 minutes to cook. And you can cook them up in a batch to have enough for a whole week. And that saves time too. Because real steel-cut oats take longer to cook, yes, but also are metabolized much more slowly by the body. And that's what we're looking for. To replace toast or bagels or pancakes or waffles, some people like to use almond or coconut flour instead of wheat flour. Personally, I tried these alternatives and in the end I gave up because recreating these products was making me crave the originals. So see how you feel with alternative flours, or practice reframing breakfast foods that don't include flour-based foods. If you're used to buying flavored yogurt, even vanilla flavored, take a minute in the grocery store to have a look at the list of ingredients. Chances are there's some kind of sweetener in that yogurt, and sometimes even fillers or thickeners. You can replace flavored yogurt with full-fat plain yogurt. And then you can add your own whole fruit or even vanilla essence. And by full fat, I mean 5% or even 10% fat content. And don't worry, in the absence of added sugar, fat in food won't make you fat. Because according to human biology, insulin is the hormone that encourages fat storage in the body, and if you don't stimulate your insulin so much, you're far less likely to put on weight, or more precisely, to put on body fat. And funnily enough, foods that contain fat don't actually stimulate your insulin that much. Again, especially if they don't also contain added sugars. Now, at this point, you may be thinking, but these foods sound so plain. They have no flavor to them. Where am I going to get that sweetness from? And this is such a huge mindset shift to go from looking for foods and recipes that are sweet tasting to actually reducing right down to 0 for some of us, reducing the sweetness in our food so that we're not always craving it. Why? Because for some of us who get triggered by sweet tastes, myself included, it's so much more peaceful and freeing not to have to keep looking for that sweetness, either in natural sources or in replacements for natural sweetness. And yes, it requires retraining your taste buds to enjoy less and less sweetness over time. And in my personal experience, it also requires retraining your brain to see food and tastes differently. I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews, and when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar. All right, so just before the break, I mentioned retraining your taste buds and your brain to get used to less and less general sweetness in your food. And one way to do that is with my chia jam recipe. I have it on my Life After Sugar YouTube channel, and here it is. Hello, I want to show you how I make my super easy chia jam. You can make it with frozen fruit, fresh fruit, and really fruit in season. And if it's frozen, it doesn't even have to be in season. Try to pick the least sweet fruits that you can. So most berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, cranberries, red currants, all those fruits are much less sweet than the more tropical fruits like bananas or pineapples. So try to use berries rather than the sweeter fruits. And what's cool about this jam is that even though the fruit is a little bit whizzed up in the blender and liquidized, you add in extra fiber with the whole chia seeds. And what they do overnight, when you leave the mixture of the jam overnight in the fridge, the chia seeds act a bit like pectin would, and they jellify or solidify the jam a little bit. You'll see at the end of the video the type of texture that this jam has. No added sugar, no added ingredients, just fruit and the chia seeds. You only actually need 2 ingredients for this recipe. 1 cup of fruit, so you can use any kinds of berries like raspberries, and for every cup of fruit, use 1 tablespoon of chia seeds, whole chia seeds. You can also add some water, but if the berries or the fruit are frozen, you may not need it. I put my frozen berries on the heat just to defrost them a little bit. I boil them up for maybe 30 seconds and then leave them to cool. And then I put them in my Ninja, a blender or a food processor and whiz them up just for a few seconds to break them up a little bit. Then I put the fruit mixture into a mason jar or a glass jar, add the whole chia seeds and mix them up gently until the chia seeds are completely mixed in the fruit mixture. Then you put the mixture in the fridge overnight, and the next morning the chia seeds have made the jam a lot more solid because they act like pectin would, and they also add fiber to the jam. And I eat it with my yogurt in the morning. Because it doesn't have preservatives in it, this jam only lasts for a few days in the fridge. So if you think you're not going to eat too much of it, just make a small amount at a time. You can also make this jam and give it in small pots as beautiful gifts. Enjoy! Here are a couple more sugar-free recipes. If you're wondering how to replace industrial or store-bought salad dressing, because the vast majority of commercial salad dressings contain some kind of added sugars or dubious ingredients, then you can make some very simple homemade dressings by just mixing olive oil and lemon juice or vinegar with salt and herbs, or mixing full-fat sour cream or plain yogurt with herbs and a little salt. If you're wondering how to replace pasta, then you can spiralize vegetables or simply cut up veggies or use frozen veggies instead of pasta. In the fall, I like to use a spaghetti squash with pasta sauce, and I cut the spaghetti squash in half, either cook it in the pressure cooker or in the oven, and it becomes a bowl. So, less dishes to wash. As for condiments, be aware that most brands of store-bought condiments contain some kind of added sugars or sweeteners. One clean brand that I've come across is Primal Kitchen for ketchup. But it's pretty simple to make your own ketchup, or even to get used to eating your food without ketchup. If you do want to make sugar-free ketchup, you can use tomato paste mixed with some white vinegar, sea salt, onion powder, garlic powder, yellow mustard, a little bit of allspice, and a little pinch of ground cloves. Same for barbecue sauce. You can mix up balsamic vinegar, a little bit of water, tomato paste, Dijon mustard, a little soy sauce, garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. And for both recipes, if you do find that you need a little bit more sweetness, then you can add a medjool date or two. And here's a simple recipe for mayo. Take 1 large egg at room temperature and blend it up in a food processor for about 20 seconds. Then add 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard, 1 tablespoon of red or white wine vinegar, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and process in the food processor for another 20 seconds. Then scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl, turn the food processor on, and then begin to slowly add 1 cup of neutral flavored oil, preferably unrefined oil, such as avocado oil. And add the oil in tiny drops until about 1/4 of the oil has been added, and this slow dripping and adding into the food processor is critical for proper emulsification. In other words, for making a creamy mayonnaise. When you notice that the mixture is beginning to thicken and emulsify, you can be a little less strict with the rhythm of adding the oil. And with the food processor still on, continue to add the rest of the oil slowly, but you can increase it to a very thin stream instead of just drops of oil. When all of the oil has been added, scrape the bottom and sides of the bowl and process for an extra 10 seconds. Then you can taste your mayonnaise for seasoning and add salt, lemon juice, or extra vinegar to taste. And by the way, if the mayonnaise seems too thin, then you can slowly stream in more oil with the processor running until it gets thicker. And this mayonnaise can be stored, covered, in the refrigerator up to a week. Why make your own? Well, if you look at the list of ingredients in most popular brands of store-bought mayonnaise, you'll probably find sugar as one of the ingredients. Okay, so now time for a little rant on my part about how the processed foods industry has made us consumers believe that foods are boring if they don't include all kinds of flavors and flavorings, and how life is boring when we don't get introduced to new and improved flavors that, well, happen to be engineered in a lab with the goal of creating a dopamine high in our brain and getting us to buy more of these products. And we consumers are so used to this type of marketing and general messages about what food is supposed to taste like that the alternative seems kind of dull and boring. It's like we can't imagine why we would eat a salad without dressing, or at least without 27 types of dressings that are available for us on the supermarket shelves. Or we can't imagine eating meat or fish or veggies without some kind of sauce or condiment. It's like our brains have been so hyped up on fake tastes that the taste of real foods may seem boring. So that's something to get used to. Not boring food, but the taste of real foods rather than the taste of manufactured flavors. But of course, this takes time. So if you do find that your main dish or your main protein needs a little pizzazz, I want to share with you one of my most favorite recipes, which is for a Hollandaise sauce, which doesn't contain sugar or flour. Here it is. You'll need 2 tablespoons or 30 milliliters of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons or 30 milliliters of water, 4 egg yolks at room temperature, and 1 cup of butter melted and cooled, and salt and pepper to taste. In a bowl on top of a saucepan of simmering water, whisk the lemon juice with the water and egg yolks until thick and fluffy. Then remove the bowl from the double boiler and off the heat, drizzle in the butter, whisking constantly. Season with salt and pepper. Keep the sauce aside at room temperature and you can reheat it on top of the double boiler over simmering water, whisking just for a few seconds just before serving. You can serve the sauce with salmon or with another type of fish or with steak or veggies or with eggs like Eggs Benedict. What I like to do is to make a big quantity of this sauce, and then with the extra sauce I pour it into an ice cube tray and put it in the freezer overnight, and then the next day I put the sauce cubes in a freezer bag or a Ziploc bag, and then I have individual portions of the sauce to defrost as needed. And if the sauce separates, you just need to whisk it a bit to make it smooth again. I love this Hollandaise sauce, and I hope you will too. So I hope that this episode has shown you that it's absolutely possible to make real foods and real tastes varied and interesting instead of being reliant on the processed foods industry to provide us with fake foods and fake flavors and make us believe that that's what we need in our life for variety and happiness. And if you're looking to reduce the amount of added sugars in your diet, then real whole foods are the way to go. And that's why the recipes and ideas in this episode are based on real foods and real food ingredients. And if you're looking for more meal ideas and more recipes, and especially a deeper dive into why reducing or cutting sugar and flour can transform your life and your relationship with sugar, then the Freedom from Cravings Formula 90-day program is for you. It's a program that's specifically designed for women over 50 who want to get rid of cravings and feel more in control around food, especially sugar and comfort foods. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of a restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life where you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can hop on a free clarity call with me at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on the big green button, Schedule a Clarity Call. We'll have a quick 30-minute one-on-one chat to see if the Freedom from Cravings Formula 90-day program is a good fit for you. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.